Let's begin with your childhood. What's the earliest memory you remember before the war changed everything?
Thank you, Mazen. I have vivid memories of my childhood, and I can remember things that go all the way back to when I was 4 years old. It actually freaks out members of my family because they can't really figure out how do I remember all these details of my childhood. I remember vividly when I was 5 years old in 1975 when the war erupted in central Lebanon, central Beirut, and we had to make a choice as a family. I'm one of 9 brothers and sisters, and I'm the youngest in the family with one younger sister than me, so I'm the one before the youngest, if you like. But with a very quite big age gap between me and my eldest, if you like. So my eldest brother is 22 years older than me, so he's almost like a father figure to me. He was already in the United States. He was in Atlanta, Georgia, and he was married to an American lady. And my other brother as well, Salim, was also, so Salim is the oldest, Salim was my second oldest. We're all based in the US already, going through university. At the time we fled through the downtown Beirut, the sort of ruins of downtown Beirut, under gun shells and bombings. And I remember it was quite dark. I don't know if you recall these things. In the war, they used to paint the headlights with something that was used in the washing. It was called the nili. It's a blue tablet that they put in the washing, and they put it on the headlights, so the headlights are dimmed, so you're not necessarily showing, the car doesn't show that clearly in the dark. So I remember, with these sort of blue lights, going out to the port, getting on a boat that took us across the water to Cyprus, and that began our journey of migration to the United States.
And what year was that?
1975. So I was 5 years old. My siblings and us, we went to Cyprus, and then we went to the U.S. Embassy and applied for a immigrant visa at the time, with, of course, my brother and his wife in the U.S. Supporting our application on the other side. In the 70s, things were quite different in the U.S. I think people were probably more understanding. There was less political conflict, and I could tell you a lot of Americans didn't know much about the Middle East. They probably heard of Saudi Arabia, Egypt, but nothing else. Yet alone Lebanon, a small country in the Middle East, was not necessarily known. So our journey began, and I remember when we arrived to the United States, and at the airport, our landing was at JFK Airport in New York. Unlike today, we didn't have Emirates Airlines and all the beautiful carriers, so you had to do multiple stops before you reached the U.S. And I remember us going through Amsterdam, and those who've traveled back then, you'd remember you had to wait a long time for connections, and sometimes up to 8 hours, and you'd be sitting at an airport up to 8 hours waiting for your next flight. And that was the norm. People were used to that, and everybody would do the same. I remember, as a child, running around the airport, and as we got to Atlanta, it was the first time in Atlanta I laid my eyes on a dark-skinned person, or on a black guy, and I was astonished by that because as a child growing up in Lebanon, I didn't see many or any, and I just kept staring at this person, and my mother and my sister at the time kept distracting me, saying, "Stop staring at them. Don't look like that." So it was something I really recalled. But what was really funny is when we settled into our home in Atlanta, our new home, and my parents didn't waste time. They just went straight and got me into kindergarten. And as I got into kindergarten, I met this little boy named Steve, black little kid, and him and I became really good friends. And I remember Steve being very energetic. We'd all play on the swing, and he'd be climbing the swing. So, and I always thought, how does Steve do that? He can climb anywhere. So these are just memories of my childhood, which I thought was, despite we had to, flee and go through those difficult moments and through bombings and leaving everything behind, I lived a really beautiful childhood, and it brought the family a lot closer together. We sort of, been forced into environments where we had to be together the whole time and sort of huddle closer. And I remember we had to learn new things in the U.S. I mean, one of the funny stories I'll tell you is my parents told us, "Don't you ever throw anything on the streets, because the police will come and get you." And I remember we had a close by our house a convenience store, so we'd go there and buy candy and buy sweets and whatever. And my sister and one of my brothers, we were walking back, and I remember actually I unwrapped the candy and I didn't listen. I threw it on the floor, and there was a police car that was just parked there. Actually, it was getting fuel, and my brother shouts, "The police are here!" So we all thought the police is coming to get me for throwing that paper. So I was running back and forth to pick up the paper back off the floor and run home. It's probably one of the scariest moments, as we were warned about this. But the police wasn't looking at us. We just assumed, or we thought as kids, oh, the police was there because we threw that wrapper. So yeah, and then look, I went through middle school and high school. What I can tell you I remember clearly is throughout my years in the U.S., as a child, children don't differentiate. They don't think, Haitham, where are you from? What's the difference? You sort of blend in until you get to a certain age. And for me, it was probably when I was 12. That's when I was in middle school. And children started to realize, that I was different. Where is he from? What's this name? How do you pronounce your name? And I can't remember the amount of times I had to teach people how to pronounce my name. But I refused to change it because a lot of people who went to the U.S. would have changed. If you're Muhammad, you become Mo or Michael, or or you become Joe or John. And I refused to change my name. I just stuck to it is my name, and I just made sure people remember it. And I'm saying it's Haitham. People made fun. Some people say hi thumb, hello thumb. But you know what? It resonated and it stuck in their mind, and they remembered my name, and that was important to me. So I went through a stage where I was bullied by other kids because I was different. And you got to consider I'm the only sort of non-American in these schools because no other Arabs or Americans migrated at that time to the U.S. at that age. So I wouldn't run into a Lebanese or a Palestinian or a Jordanian or whatever in these years of my life. So my mother, may she rest in peace, she sort of pushed us all towards sports. Get a hobby, get sports. And I wanted to learn how to play American football. So I got into that. I tried baseball, I tried basketball, but somehow I really loved American football. And probably because we watched so many games on TV, and I just got really into it, right, as a child. And I wanted to play. So I went for tryouts. This was at my junior year of high school. Went for tryouts, actually sophomore year. And after a couple of tryouts, finally I made it. And I made it in the position of what they call wide receiver. So the wide receiver is when the quarterback throws the ball, you're at the other end. You got to run fast. You have to run really fast because if they catch you, you're in trouble, right? So you got to run fast. You got to have a good eye-ball coordination, catch the ball, run towards the touchdown. And that was my game.
Wow.
And I think this is what sort of got me out of the bullying. I got accepted. I got accepted because I could play football just like they do.
You left home at 17, and you mentioned that in your book as well. And you started washing dishes to survive. Was there ever a point where you questioned, where is this going to lead to? Can I keep going?
Yeah, well, let me take you back to why the decision for me to leave at the age of 17, right? So I'm one of the youngest, or sort of the youngest boy in the family. My brothers and sisters much older than me, so you'd be critiqued about everything that you do or say, and everybody wants to teach you a lesson So throughout my years, I sort of felt I needed this independence. I need to do things on my own. I needed to prove myself, right? Because when you're in that size family and you're the youngest, no matter what you do, you're always criticized, right? Why did you do it that way? Why did you say that? No, you don't say that. No, so I had so many teachers from brothers and sisters, 8 of them plus my parents trying to teach me, new ways or better ways for the right reasons. Nothing wrong with that. But as a child in me, I wanted to spread my wings and I wanted independence. So I decided to get a job at the age of 17. And my friends who were also with me, this was my last year of high school, they all started jobs. It's normal in the United States for kids at 16 to 17 to go get a job. If you don't, your parents will kick you out and say, hey, you need to go get a job. My parents didn't do that with me, but I was willingly wanting to get a job. One, because I wanted that sense of belonging. All my friends were working and I wasn't, especially on the weekend. So I started with a weekend job. And there was a courtyard by Marriott just across the street in Atlanta, Georgia, or Marietta, Georgia is the city. And I went looking for a job. And they said, look, all we have vacant is a dishwasher. And I said, I'll take it. I didn't even know what a dishwasher is. I've never been in a dish room, but I'll take it. So I got in my first day, trainee to train how to run the dish room. How do you, turn on the dishwasher? It's this big machine. You got to put stuff through it. Comes the other end, clean. But there's a process. It was steamy. It was hot. You could smell, leftovers of food. Fortunately, I started on the afternoon shift. So it wasn't, the sort of crazy, busy afternoons. When in the hotel, most people are either outside doing business deals, or so you'd have some people, trickling in here and there for lunch. But it gave me time to learn how to operate the dishwasher itself.
How many hours a day?
I worked 7 to 8 hours a day.
Okay.
You get a 30-minute break, but you do 7 to 8 hours a day. And back then you had to clock in, clock out, because you paid by the hour. So part of the dishwashing isn't just dishwashing, right? There's a process. You got to have racks. You have to put the glasses separately, and you can't put the glasses with dishes and other stuff. The water needs to be cleaned and drained and filled up again, so you don't get spots on the glasses. So you had a process, and you had to put stuff in order. You can't just put stuff all in there. And the pots and the pans, they don't go through the dishwasher. Some of them are just too big. So those you have to do by hand, especially big pots where they used to cook broth and bigger meals. So you'd have to have these big pots. And sometimes my shoulders were getting stuck in these big pots as you go in there, right? So I started to learn how to do this, job, and I realized it's not just the dishwashing, that you have to do more. You got to close the kitchen. You got to clean the floors. You got to wash the tops. You got to close out the whole kitchen. So it's not just washing the dishes, but also closing out the whole kitchen when you're done. And initially, so it was me and this other kid who was working, and he was teaching me. He was he was teaching me how to do the job, and he was very passionate about it, and things have to be really polished and clean. Took his time to show me, and he was excited, that I'm his age coming in. He was excited to show me, and we became friends. And then I came into the next day when I worked breakfast, and then I realized all hell broke loose. Because this is a 250 room hotel, so typically you get about 200 people all coming down at the same time, want to have breakfast at the same time. They all have meetings. They got to go. So you got a buffet, you got kitchen team, you got a chef screaming out loud, I need bacon, I need this, I need that. You got waitresses walking and waiters walking through the doors and shouting, screaming orders, and all I'm getting is piles and piles of dishes and glasses piled up on me to get these washed. Right now, you got to be fast because there's only a certain number of glasses, a certain number of plates, and if they run out outside, I'm in trouble. So they got to come in. I need dishes, I need plates, I need silverware. So you've got to run. You got to be fast at this and focus. No distraction. So we didn't have mobile phones. I would just have headsets and listen to music sometimes, just to get me going. But a lot of times I didn't want to listen to anything but the noise around me, because I was learning from everything that goes around me, and what people are shouting out and what they're saying out there. And I as soon as I get a little bit of a slowdown, and peek out of my dish room because I could see through that. I could see the kitchen line. And I could see, where the chef is relaxed a little bit, so the odors have slowed down. And I'd step out of the dish room and just go towards the kitchen to the chef and be curious. And just curious. I've never been in a kitchen, never seen that before, so I'd see what he does. Back in my time, chefs were, very serious. Could be very mean, and they always had a big knife, so you don't want to mess around with it. So I would ask, certain questions, and his patience wouldn't be that long. He would just answer a couple questions, and they'd send me back to the dish room, right? Go back to your room.
Yeah.
So, but that's when I showed interest in, I wanted to learn more than just being a dishwasher.
So that's when you actually stepped foot into the world of hotels and becoming a hotelier.
Yes, I mean, that wasn't my intention, right? And my intention was not to be a hotelier, to be honest with you.
What was your intention?
My intention was to have a job as my friends did, and get a salary as my friends did, and be able to support myself as my friends did. But I was studying marketing.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to be a marketeer. That was my goal. And eventually I did a master's degree in marketing, and marketing was my passion. It's just what I really loved. I just wanted to be a marketeer. But going through that, for me, that was the journey that was going to get me to the destination of becoming a marketeer. So going through the kitchen and going is a job that paid my way. That would get me, to go through university and get.
Right. And was there a point, which you also mentioned in the book, where your family left the U.S. and you remained for a certain period of time working all alone in the U.S. and trying to make ends meet?
Well, yes. So not my whole family didn't leave the U.S. My family stayed in the U.S. So I had my brother moved to the U.S. from the U.S. in 1978 to Abu Dhabi. We also had my father, who was also not in the U.S. but in Abu Dhabi in the 1980s, if you like. My mother and my father in the 80s were in Abu Dhabi. I was still in high school at the time, so 85, 86. I was still in high school. I used to visit them here in Abu Dhabi in the summers. So when everybody left, I would come here, right? And during this period where I was working, it was challenging times where to get ends meet on my own. I always knew if I called my father or called my brother for help, they'd be there. But I always was tempted sometimes to say, maybe I just call them and they'll send me some money and I'll be okay. But the fact that I took that choice and made that decision, I wanted to man up to it. I wanted to do this on my own, and I just removed all temptations, and I pushed myself to go on my own, to do things on my own. And the reason is I had made a promise to myself that I was going to do this, on my own, and do it my way. As Frank Sinatra said, right? I just wanted to do this my way. There were times where I was short on $1. I wanted to go to the movies once, and I was $1 short. Whatever I had in my pocket, $1 short, and I didn't go to the movies. I went back home, and it didn't bother me. It is what it is. But and there were. I remember living. I tell this story to my kids. I remember living on what they had before. They had these boxes of mashed potato flakes, and these mashed potato flakes, you just add milk. And you stick it in the microwave and it becomes mashed potatoes. So that was my meal. I didn't have enough money to buy proteins at the time, but working in the restaurants, gave me the option to sometimes have free meals or buy a meal at 50% discount. So I would treat myself every once in a while and buy something, buy a steak and get 50% discount on that. Or, we had certain meals that you could eat for free in these restaurants during your lunch break or your breakfast break, whatever. So working in the restaurants was a good choice because it allowed me to, not to worry about meals that much. But when I wasn't working, I had these, boxes of potato flakes that I would mix with milk, and I would have a mashed potato and on the go, and off I went. So yes, I had, I tell my kids I lived on these boxes of mashed potatoes. Sometimes I wouldn't have money to buy milk, and I just mix it with water instead of milk.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but look, all of these are the things that shaped me, person I am today. So I appreciate all the small things and the big things, and I appreciate the small wins and the big wins because I've been through that. And when I see people who are working in the field today, whether they're dishwasher or doorman, I resonate because I've been there, I've done that, and I know how difficult it is. And some of them different than me today. They are either washing dishes in our hotels or opening doors, and they have families. They're away from their families, so whether they're from Asia, from India or Pakistan or Philippines, and they live here without their family for extended periods of time. B, they have to work and send everything home. So at least I didn't have to go through that. At least I only had to support myself, which was challenging for me, but I can only imagine the challenges that people of today go through to support their families on these sort of low-wage jobs.
Your mother's passing was sudden and deeply personal. Can you take us back a little bit to that moment, and how did that change the path of your life?
When my mother passed away, I remember she was unwell. She was in the hospital, and I went to pick her up. And when we got home, she was fine. And I spoke to the doctor at the time, and he said, she's okay. She can go home. So I took her home here in Abu Dhabi, and it was around evening time. So let's say about 6 p.m. in the evening. So we sat at home, her and my sister, and my father was around, one of my brothers, and we were just, her and I just talking and having fun, and she was laughing, and we were teasing my father and her at the same time. So, then she suddenly said, "You know what I feel like?" I said, "What?" She said, "I feel like some ice cream, the Arabic pistachio ice cream in particular." I said, "You want ice cream now?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, I'll go out and get it for you." So I remember going out in the car and just, picking up some ice cream, coming home. And she had a little bit of ice cream, and then we just continued having having a laugh and enjoying our time together, watching a bit of TV, just socializing with her. And then, she looked at her watch and she's like, "Oh, it's 10 p.m. I need to go to sleep." So I said, "Okay, well, I was going out to meet some friends." And I said, "Okay, well, I'll see you in the morning," because her and I had plans to actually go to the mall. She needed to buy a dress, and I was going to go with her. So we had this plan of me taking her to the mall then. Now, I used to work in Dubai at the time, so I would, this is in the 90s. So I'd drive from Dubai on the weekends to stay with them. So that was a weekend. And as she was leaving the living room to go to her bedroom, she used to wear this little sort of cap on her head because she didn't like the AC. And she got up, and that cap fell on the floor. So I ran to pick it up before she did, because I didn't want her to bend down to pick it up. So I picked it up, and we locked eyes. And she smiled and took her cap from me and walked off. Little did I know that was the last time I was going to lock eyes with her, of course. So I go out, meet my friends, and I come home. It was late. It was a bit after midnight. And then I wake up at, about 4 o'clock in the morning, when my father was trying to wake her up to pray, because they used to wake up and pray together. And she wasn't waking up. So I woke up to his screaming. And I just woke up immediately thinking, with nothing else but she's gone. It just is the feeling of, the blood rushed straight to my head, and I thought, she's gone. So I just stormed into her bedroom, and I realized she was gone. So my father was in no state of talking to me or telling me what happened. He was just bawling. So I took him and sat him down in the living room, and I just locked myself in the room with her. And I called the 999 here in Abu Dhabi, called for an ambulance. And they showed up probably about 15 minutes, 20 minutes later. So by then, my brothers and sisters who lived in Abu Dhabi were already, at the house, but I didn't want to open the door for them. I just didn't want anybody to see her. So I just fixed her hair, put her cap back on, and covered her, and I picked her up and walked out. And I just walked down the stairs, actually. It was only 3 stories. They were on the 3rd floor of this building. So I walked down the stairs into the ambulance, and that's when I met the people of the ambulance, and we put her in the ambulance, and we, went to the hospital, and I just couldn't, the whole blood rush of thinking she's gone, but all I was thinking is, well, what's next, right? And I had this huge mental block of really not be able to think about anything. Talking about food earlier, I actually went through probably 36 hours of no food. And my brother was preparing everything on the other side. So, the ambulance ready at the airport, go straight to the graveyard for the burial, the funeral, everything he had set up. So my job was to just make sure I get the body on the plane. And my mother had a saying, if someone doesn't have an excuse, you give them one. And that's part of forgiveness. The reason she says if you don't have an excuse, just give them one. It means what? Just forgive that person for whatever it is. Give them an excuse to say, if somebody's late, well, they have an excuse, I am sure. Don't get angry about them being late. They'll be here when they're here. So, when my mother died, I wanted to investigate, to understand what happened. So I realized, of course, she had a certain heart disease, which basically has some sort of calcification that builds up in your arteries, and as well as a thick heart. Now, a thick heart could come from many reasons, including stress, by the way. So if you're someone who is always on high stress or chronic stress, your heart thickens. And the danger of that is when your heart thickens, then it doesn't have enough blood to flow to the rest of the organs. It's so thick. Now, of course, I went through this annual full checkup. Every single year, I go to the hospital and I do a full checkup, and I do it now, never stop. I go in the morning about 8 o'clock, finish about 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock sometimes. But I do everything from, now at my age, I do bone mass, and I do every single checkup you could think of, not just blood tests and lipids. And my numbers have always been good. It's always been good. And, at some point, I had to be on certain medications to just make sure my cholesterol is intact. It's hereditary. No matter what I ate, the doctor said, even if you fast, your cholesterol levels will go up because it's hereditary. And that, coupled with chronic stress, gave me a problem I wasn't waiting for. So my wife and I went to do a cycling. We went to a cycling place there called Soul Cycle. And in this exercise, I started to feel that I was breathing heavily. So I thought, something's not right. So I called my doctor in Dubai and said, look, I don't seem to feel well. I'm having this heavy breathing even when I walk. And he said, it was June, and he said, well, we did your test in November last year, and you seem to be okay. All your numbers look good. So why don't you stop by and we have a look when you're back? So I went back and I saw him, and he ran some initial tests, and he said, there's something unusual with your heartbeat that I don't like. We need to run more tests. And I started to get worried. So he ran more tests, and then he said, look, because you're athletic, we put you on what you call a stress test. You run on your stress test, and you're fine. You seem to be, you pass the stress test because you run, and your heart is strong enough. It's pumping blood, but there's something with your heartbeat that's not consistent. We need to check. So then he recommended we do an angiogram. So they go in your wrists with cameras and videos, and they see. And I did that, and then he came into the room. Obviously they sedate you. So by the time I woke up, he came and said, "Look, I got bad news. You've got blockages that are over 90% in 2 of your arteries, but you have 2 of them that are actually been blocked at 100% for many years. But he said, God didn't want you to go. You must have done something good." And the heart had created collaterals, so that on its own, that actually kept the blood flowing. So I didn't die back then, or I didn't have a heart attack. But this was a warning, right? These 2 new ones were a warning. And again, it was a signal from God. And I thought, okay, so I've been given another chance. So he said, we're going to have to do an open heart. And I immediately said no. The reason I said no is, of course, 4 or 3 of my brothers have done open heart. So I know what they've gone through. and I've consulted with them, and they said, if you can avoid it, don't do it. It's the most painful thing in the world. And they said, whenever, one of them has done it 20 years before, and they said, whenever it's cold outside, I feel the pain in my chest, in my bones. And if you can avoid it, don't do it. So the doctor wanted me to make a decision, right? I'm in the hospital, and he said, I can't release you. You're high risk. You got to make a decision. So I called a doctor I knew in Beirut. I sent him the videos. I called 2 doctors in the US, sent them the videos. And you know what? They all said, Haitham, don't leave the hospital. Do the open heart surgery. You're in a critical condition. So I started to think and reflect. I thought, all these 3 doctors and the one here are surgeons. And what do surgeons love to do? Surgeries. So I'm talking to people who want to just do surgeries. So I went on the internet and started researching, and I ran across this sort of a assessment, if you like, of your profile, which basically gives you an indication of you should have an open heart or you should have stents. So the doctor came in, and I asked him, hey, did you run that assessment on me? And he said, no. And I said, do you mind doing that? He said, sure. He went and did that, and he came back smiling with this paper in his hand. And he goes, well, guess what? The results say, because of your age, you don't smoke, you don't drink, you're athletic. If we did stents or open heart, you get the same results. So I said, doc, you got your answer. I'm not doing open heart. We're going for stents. The doctor said to me, look, we're going to have a surgeon in the room. So in case anything goes wrong, we have to cut you open. He's in the room. So I'm going in thinking, I might come out, might not come out, but I've got to do it. So I got into this surgery, and with God's blessing, I came out. So I went straight back to running, which I love, and I went back to cycling, which I love, and I would just go to whatever possible max heart rate I could get, 160, 165, and really push that. So you can't think, what if I die tomorrow all the time? Think, what if I don't? And that's important. That's what I kept in mind. And I really just stuck to my healthy sort of lifestyle.
You mentioned in your book that you lost your best friend, JJ.
JJ was a great colleague and a great friend, and a very good friend. JJ and I met each other during my Hilton days. He was vice president of operations for Western Europe. And at the time I was in sales and marketing with Hilton. I was vice president for sales marketing. And I had a sort of a wide region. I had Eastern Europe, Turkey, Russia, and the Middle East, Africa. So I was on what they call the executive committee of the EMEA, Europe, Middle East, Africa. And so was JJ. And we would meet, every quarter. Him and I connected. We sort of had the same background. He started in the kitchen. He grew through the ranks. And we always exchanged notes on things. And then he moved to Dubai. I was in Saudi at the time, and he became president for Hilton for the Middle East Africa. He had Turkey as well at the time. I used to meet JJ at a place called Crank in Dubai in the Sarkar Avenue, where it's an indoor cycling class, and we'd go 2-3 times a week. And JJ was 6'2", he was tall and fit, and he would always tease me about my power generated through the bike and where I am on the leaderboard versus his. And bless his soul, he used to be on top of the leaderboard, always number 1, and I'd be like 7 or 8, and he'd just call me old man. You've got and I'd say, you got, look at these long legs, and you're taller than me. You got an advantage already. So that's why you're faster on the bike than I am. And he'd just tease me, no, you're just an old man. So when I had the health scare, JJ and I had a coffee, and he said, listen, man, you've got to look after yourself. Hilton and ISG, they're gonna suck your life like that. You can't just think everything in the world is work. You gotta. And I said, look at you. You do the same thing. You travel as much as I do. You're meeting owners. You're solving problems. And he said, yeah, but listen, in probably a year and a half, I'm gonna retire. And I said, hey, JJ was about 3 years older than me. And I think, look, we had this discussion, and he was giving me advice that I needed to slow down at work and look after myself, look after my well-being, and that was very important. So I went to meet him for breakfast at the usual spot, and JJ was always punctual. He was always on time. It was a 9 a.m. breakfast, and I'm usually 9:05, 9:06, and JJ would always be there, tease me all the time. So I got there at 9:05 or 9:06, can't remember exactly, but I remember he wasn't there, and I was surprised. So I turned around to the waiter and said, "Where's JJ?" And they said, "Oh, he's not here yet." I was surprised, he's not here yet. Good, well, maybe he's late. He's never late. Anyhow, so I sit and wait, and then I text him, on his WhatsApp, and I realized his last seen was like 11 p.m. the night before. And I know JJ is similar to me. He's up at 5 and he's already in the gym or doing some exercise before we meet. So to be honest, I started to worry, but I just didn't think what's happening. So, and I was getting late. I need to go back to the office. So I ordered breakfast, and I was teasing JJ, sending pictures of my breakfast and saying, "You're going to pay for this. You're late. I don't know what's happening." Then I called him, and I didn't get an answer, and I thought, I'll just head over to the office. So I went over to the office, and as soon as I got there, I got a call from one of his colleagues at the time to say, JJ passed away in his sleep. And I was just completely shocked. I just really didn't know. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to answer. I put the phone down. I sat down, and I just held my head and thought, what just happened? JJ was fit. He had a clean bill of health. He used to tease me about my health. He's giving me advice about, me having to look after myself, making myself number one. And he goes, right? And he was about to, give himself a year and a half and retire, and then he goes. And he left a big void, if you like, in my friendship life. I think, he died of a cardiac arrest in his sleep, although he was healthy. So I'll tell you a short story. Just, 2 weeks ago, I was in Singapore. And I don't know what happened in these 4 days I was in Singapore. It's only 4 hours ahead. And I travel the world, and sometimes I'm 8 hours behind, and sometimes I'm 2 hours ahead. And when you're in India, you're an hour and a half ahead. So for some reason, Mazen, I couldn't sleep. I'd sleep 1.5 hours, 1 hour, 20 minutes every single day for 3 days. And I'm there for a senior leadership meeting, which actually requires my presence, my physical and mental presence, my focus, my participation in these meetings that are all day long with downloads of PowerPoints and discussions and debates and short breaks. And then you finish the day with a short break, and then you're off to dinner, socializing. That's all sucking up the energy. But following the guidance from what Whoop told me to do to recover, it realizes, hey, you're not sleeping. Yeah, so you don't go and sit down. Do a short walk. Get your blood flowing, right? Do a short walk. Eat healthy nuts. Eat healthy fats. Do protein, electrolytes. And I was downing electrolytes 3-4 times a day. And to be honest with you, my colleagues were surprised because I was telling them, look, I showed them look, I slept an hour and 20 minutes last night. They said, you don't look like it, And I was engaging and said, you sure you only slept an hour, 20 minutes? You're so engaging and participating. And yeah, this is the way you manage your health, and you've got to monitor your health in order to manage your health.
And you feel technology has helped you do that?
Incredibly,
yeah.
Incredibly. And I tell you what, one of the things that also gave me an indication, I forgot to mention, from my first health scare, I'm not wearing it today, but I always wear an Apple Watch. And the Apple Watch was giving me indications for 1 week when I was in the US, a whole week, that I was performing below level in cardio. So my cardio was below level, my VO2 max was below level. I didn't think too much of it, to be honest with you. But that was Apple telling me, hey, something's wrong, right? Something's wrong. And I showed this to my doctor later on. I showed him that report. And he said, right, so that's when your cardio level started to drop. And it wasn't a week, it was a month, because I was above level, and it started to drop. And that week I was below level. I was giving me warnings. Yeah. So I believe in this technology, and I don't believe they're just accessories. There's science behind them. There's huge investments made behind them. And if you really just dig deeper into the data. Look, some people tell you, no, I don't want to wear this because I don't want to know. I want to know because I hate surprises. Yeah. I don't want to be surprised, right? I want to lead a healthy life. I want to be there for my children. I want to be there for my family, and I want to be there for the people I work with and work for, and I don't want to surprise them or myself.
If you could go back in time to your 17-year-old self, what advice would you give yourself?
You know, one thing is I have no regrets. I enjoyed the highs and lows of my life, my personal life, the highs and lows of my career. I probably would do it all over again. There's nothing that I would change in my life or think, oh, I wish I'd have done that differently. And I think if I can give advice to, let's say, people who are considering the hospitality industry as a career, you know, they just have to be passionate about it. And you know, money comes and goes. Money is not everything. You've got to do a job that you like. You know, probably kids my age of this generation today, they think we've got to have a job that pays a lot of money. You know, I've got to have the Rolls Royce and the Rolex and the rubies and the, you know,
All the stuff you see on Instagram today.
absolutely,
Yeah.
you've got to have all that, and those are nice to have.
Yeah.
They're not, you know, nice to have. I don't have a Rolls Royce and I don't wear a Rolex, and I enjoy my life. I enjoy moments of my life that are meaningful to me. I have experiences that resonate with me, and I have experiences that I remember, whether it's with my children or my family or and my friends. And I think you know, when you're at that age, this is where you know every decision matters at that age, because this sort of dictates the way you're going to go. So it's really, I think the advice here is, you know, make whatever decision you want that makes you happy as a person. You know, don't worry about what people think and how people judge you. It's, you know, you got to pull up the mirror and look at yourself and be happy. You got to be comfortable with your own skin, you know. And if you want to wear black today, you wear black. If you want to wear white, and you know, it's not necessarily because you want to pose to the Instagram. Those are imaginary followers on Instagram or any social media. You know, your real followers are those who you touch and see every day. Those people you work with every day, your family. These are your followers.
I read something once that went like, if you lost everybody you love today, how many of your followers would break their last piece of bread with you?
The followers are engaging, are interested in your imaginary life. We see things on Instagram that not necessarily the reality. You see snippets of someone's day, but that's not their whole day.
It's just what they want you to see.
At that moment.
A perfect polished life or a perfect polished moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Haitham, for your time.
Thank you, Mazen.
I love your book.
Thank
I love everything you stand for.
I appreciate it.
And yeah, until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.